Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We are in the Calamus section, and we turn now to a very interesting little poem, Not Heaving from My Ribb'd Breast Only. Now we're going to say something about, and we've already said something about, the fact that Whitman loves this strange ordering of words, which makes you read it and kind of go, wait, what? And we're going to see it in the first line, and we're going to see it in the last line of this text. Now the assumption is that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side are Talks with Walt, and that you have been paying attention to everything that we've said from the introduction and inscriptions work all the way and up through and including These I Singing in Spring. And obviously there's some preparatory lectures that we've given as we started down the Calamus section, and they're provided in the description box of this lecture as well. Now let's turn, as we always do, to our Nortons for a bit of background information. There isn't a lot to say about this poem. It was number 6 of the Calamus group in 1860, and the poem remained unchanged through all editions, taking its title in 1867 from the actual line itself. Now there is a very interesting word here that will get used, and Nortons will remind us that this word, adhesiveness, that happens in line 16, is a phrenological term. It has to do with this pseudoscience that was very popular in Whitman's day, where they measured the bumps on your head and all of this. The word adhesiveness comes to mean the propensity for friendship. Many have read this as Whitman's code language for maybe some kind of homosexual love as opposed to heterosexual love, as we were speaking about in our Children of Adam section. Now, one of the interesting things about this poem, just looking at it on the page, and my hope, of course, as we've said, is that you are reading and annotating your own copy of this. Notice the repetition of the word not at the beginning of all of these lines. We'll have, of course, 14 of these nots along with 2 nors. And this will remind us of the Calamus sections of 13, 15, 26 as well. So we're going to play that game as we get into this. Now, let's just begin with the first line and notice the strange syntax or order that's in play here. We're also in this poem going to see some very rarely used words, and words only used one time in the entire Leaves of Grass, in systole and distole. Not heaving from my ribb'd breast only, not in sighs at night, in rage dissatisfied with myself, not in those long-drawn, ill-suppressed sighs, not in many an oath and promise broken, not in my willful and savage soul's volition, not in the subtle nourishment of the air, not in this beating and pounding at my temples and wrists, not in the curious systole and distole within which will one day cease. Not in many a hungry wish told to the skies only, not in cries, laughter, defiances, thrown from me when alone far in the wilds, not in husky pantings through clenched teeth, not in sounded and resounded words, chattering words, echoes, dead words, not in the murmurs of my dreams while I sleep, nor the other murmurs of these incredible dreams of every day, nor in the limbs and senses of my body that take you and dismiss you continually, not there, not in any or all of them. Oh, adhesiveness, oh, pulse of my life. Need I that you exist and show yourself any more than in these songs? Now, it is a fascinating little poem because it begins with the word not and it ends with the word need. And we go through this series of not, not, not. Let's play this game really quickly. By the way, the word heaving, it gets used very rarely in Leaves of Grass. We'll think of it in Song of Exposition, passage 8. We'll see it as well in Return of the Hero, passage 2. Not heaving from my, notice the elided verb, ribb'd breast only, nor in sighs, we've seen that term several times already in Leaves of Grass, at night in rage. It's interesting, the word rage does not get used very often in Leaves of Grass. It's kind of fascinating that the word is reserved very, very rarely. Sometimes with the One I Love we'll see it, as well as Song of Joys. Dissatisfied with myself. One of the heart really truths of Leaves of Grass is Whitman's willingness to admit his dissatisfaction with himself and obviously the world that he sometimes lives in. In other words, there are people who argue that Whitman is nothing more than this crazy optimist, and I would argue You know, poems like this suggest otherwise. There's moments that Whitman, or the speaker of our poems, it may not be the same as we've said many times in prior lectures, is clearly unsettled and dissatisfied with what's happening. Not in those long drawn, ill-suppressed, notice how he backs those two words up with hyphens, right? Sighs, we've seen that word regularly. Not in many an oath and promise broken. Obviously, Whitman knew his share of being let down. Not in my willful and savage soul's volition. Now, the word savage, as we said earlier in Song of Myself, does get used as a noun. But as an adjective, it very rarely gets used, right? 1 Hour to Madness, we saw it, as well as Salute Amende, passage number 10, we'll see it. Savage used as an adjective, right? Not in the subtle nourishment of the air. And we said this in our final lines of Song of Myself. Nourishment, growth, is dynamic and always a part of understanding the way in which Leaves of Grass is constructed. Not in this beating and pounding. We're going to get to systole and distole in a bit. Beating and pounding at my temples and wrists. Now, I told you about this wrist thing. I told you, we're going to see it over and over again. It is a body part that for Whitman, he's quite fascinated with. Not in the curious, and again, Whitman loved his science. We're here going to get one part of science, and then, of course, we're going to get with this adhesiveness phrase, as I have said to you, a pseudoscience, right? Not in the curious systole and distole, within which will one day cease. That within which will one day cease is, again, strange kind of syntax order. It is, of course, going to remind us of Song of Myself, passage 6, and to die is luckier than what one supposed. Not in many a hungry wish. It is a fascinating thing to just study Leaves of Grass, paying attention to the brilliant way that Whitman uses adjectives. Not in many a hungry wish told to the skies only. I can't help but think of The Little Prince, the classic tale, as we've spoken elsewhere about. Not in cries, laughter, defiances, that is to say, the three, right? Thrown from me when alone far in the wilds. Hey, do you remember this? I mean, the word echo is going to get used here in a little bit, but do you guys remember that when we were messing around in Song of Myself, passage 10, do you remember this opening line? Alone, far in the wilds and mountains I hunt. Go back and look at this line. Not in Christ, laughter, defiance is thrown from me when alone, far in the wilds. It's amazing how he plays this game of the echoes. Not in husky pantings. Now, he likes this word husky. You'll see it when you pick up Leaves of Grass. Through clenched teeth, this may be, of course, some sexual language. Not in sounded and resounded words, chattering words, echoes, dead words. It's fascinating the way he keeps using this word, words, over and over again. And of course, chattering is a word we're familiar with through Leaves of Grass already. And the echoes. My words echo thus in your mind is the way that T.S. Eliot will say it in those opening lines of Burnt Norton that we've quoted so often, that at some point you cannot help but say, let's go back and look at LearnStrong.net in those lectures of T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets, especially Burnt Norton, and let's just pay attention to the way that Four Quartets is in large measure an homage. It is a celebration of Whitman's Leaves of Grass, regardless of what T.S. Eliot had to say about it, right? Not in the murmurs of my dreams while I sleep. We're going to get to that amazing poem, Sleepers, later. Of course, dreams here will be repeated in the next line. Not in the other murmurs of these incredible dreams of every day, this longing, this murmuring, this dreaming, right? Nor, now we've got two of the nor, right? Nor in the limbs and senses of my body that take you. Now, obviously, the question remains you, and obviously the last line. Who is this you? Is he speaking to a special you? Is he speaking to you, the reader? This is one of the brilliant ways that Leaves of Grass is constructed, that it very much is directly towards you. You, and dismiss you continually, and then a use of the hyphen makes us think, of course, of Emily Dickinson. Not there, not in any or all of them. In other words, nothing is as powerful for me as, right, adhesiveness. Pulse of my life. Again, notice the repetition of the word we've seen this already. We saw it in inscriptions. We saw it in Song of Myself. Pulse of my life. He loves this word, pulse. We'll run it to ground, obviously, over the course of the study, right? He says it then, need I. Now, of course, this not in any or all of them, adhesiveness, not there after the dash, and now we're going to get this, need I that you exist and show yourself. Again, that's the third use of the second pronoun you. Any more than in these songs. And again, the syntax is strange, just like the opening line. And I think Whitman loves to do this because it challenges the reader to slow down and to rebuild the line syntactically to understand exactly what he's saying. Of course, it's a simple poem at 2A, right? That is to say, there is nothing more important than friendship, adhesiveness as he will call it, right? Notice the use of the word songs to finish, and again, songs may be the key word of all words of this whole Leaves of Grass. He loved his music, he loved his musical references. Of course, the 2B observation here is just that repetition of not, and then finally nor, over and over again. I just want to point out at 3A all of the great stories of friendship. I mean, we'll think about, of course, the great story of David and Jonathan from 1 Samuel 18. You can think about all of the great stories of friendships that we have studied in 303 over the years. Achilles and Patroclus obviously comes to mind. That notion of adhesiveness, and you can go back and see those lectures we've given on all of the Iliad at learnstrong.net. Finally, at 3B, who is your pal? Who is your friend? To what degree do you appreciate the idea of friendship, of adhesiveness, as Whitman will talk about it? And to what degree, for you, do you long for that beyond anything else? Is that, in the end, what you need more than anything, what all of us need? More than anything. And of course, Whitman's going to argue, if you have my songs, then you have a certain kind of adhesiveness, which itself is a remarkable idea. Thank you.